Live. Hey everyone, and welcome to Ask Daniel number 46. And with us today we have Coach Michael.
Hey everybody, great to be here.
How are you today?
Doing really well, How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Very good.
Good.
So we have a question from Alex that I thought we'll go over in detail. As always, a lot to talk about. And what else? Oh, wait, before we start, I wanted to still do our customary behind the scenes stuff. And we have 3 clients now in our course. That's exciting. And this is exciting too. Doing more, live sessions here is going to be really cool.
Yeah.
And anything else we should mention?
I don't think so. I think just every week it's kind of growing and new stuff happening, and
right?
It's cool. I like the live stuff. This is great.
Let's jump into this question here. This is from Alex. So for just a little bit of context, this is someone who has asked a few questions before on the show, and I think twice, and I've given him some pointers. And he came back with a couple of questions yesterday that I thought would be perfect for us to talk about today. So let's read this. Hey, Daniel, I just want to give you an update. I'm about 4 to 5 weeks of sleep restriction. To be honest, I didn't stick with the schedule every single day, apart from my wake-up time. However, I noticed that some part of my anxiety definitely faded away, and I'm doing much better throughout the day. At first, I was sleeping 4 to 5 hours. My sleep latency has improved. I started having nights in which I could sleep around 6 hours or more, although I woke up throughout the night. Last 2 nights, I managed to sleep 7 hours, ! Yesterday, I went to bed at my normal bedtime, but I was there for about 20 minutes and didn't feel sleepy, so I left. I decided to do something opposite in my evening routine, but something I enjoyed. So I started playing computer games, nothing stimulating though. I went to bed before midnight, took me 30 minutes to fall asleep, but I eventually did. Woke up around my normal wake-up time, and I felt kind of refreshed. I would like to say that before my insomnia started, I was falling asleep in seconds. However, I realized now that it wasn't kind of normal. I wasn't sleeping long enough at the time because I just didn't have much time for sleeping, work and university, and my body just begged for that sleep. It makes me think that I used to fall asleep in seconds, and I got really impatient right now. I don't perform such dynamic lifestyles before. Just want to ask you, is such inconsistency one day good night and the other worse normal ? If so, why is that? Another question, if alcohol makes me relaxed, is it okay to drink 1 beer? Sorry for the length of the message, and wish to hear from you. So a couple of questions in here. I think if we narrow it down here, one of them is is it normal to have this variability? The other one is about alcohol. And then why is that we have so much variability? And a lot to talk about here, but overall take when you hear this, Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, variability is pretty normal. So, to expect exactly the same every night is not realistic. And I like to phrase it as every day is different. So why would every night be the same? Why would you fall asleep at the same time, at the same duration, latency? Why would you have the same depth of sleep? It's all the whole yin yang kind of idea that, day affects night and night affects day. So, that's the first thing that came to my mind about that. I guess also just, they were initially a bit sleep deprived if they were starting off doing sleep restriction and they were falling asleep in seconds. That kind of implies there's some sleep deprivation, which is not the same thing as insomnia. So those are 2 things that kind of came to my mind right away about the variability of their sleep experience.
When I read this, same thing. I feel like there's a lot of insight here, meaning this is somebody that says that they didn't have any problem sleeping before. In fact, they fell asleep in seconds. And that to me, it's like you said, implies that they were probably so busy. They were actually not allotting. They didn't have much time to sleep. So it became very easy. It happened very fast. And then now they have this realization that maybe that wasn't entirely normal.
Right. And it happens to people who have very busy work lives too, and probably you've seen patients and clients that will say, my insomnia started after I retired, and what they mean is that they were on a very rigid schedule for maybe 30 years, maybe 40 years and working hard. Maybe they had their own business or whatever. And then everything kind of went unstructured. And then they start thinking more about their sleep and about their health in general and about everything. And so that becomes the problem. Not to say that they should be chronically sleep deprived after they retire, but there's got to be you got to find kind of the middle ground, and you got to be, not giving so much focus and effort to sleep. after you retire. So that it's kind of like, it reminds me of that type of client.
Absolutely. That's such a classic one. And particularly, I'm sure you heard this one, Mike, but somebody who's going to retire and they're like, I'm going to retire. I'm going to really get all that sleep I've been missing out on. And then that doesn't happen. In fact, they have trouble sleeping. And have you seen lately that, and I actually don't know the exact context here when it comes to Alex, but, and I think he actually connected with me before the whole coronavirus COVID situation, but have you come across a lot of people that start having trouble sleeping now because of this, that you actually have more time?
Yeah, more time, and more time to focus on it and to give it attention. You know, that insomnia is just craving attention. It just wants you to think about your sleep off and on during the day. And that, as it gets closer to bed, it just wants you to think about it. And, you know, someone's at home more, they're just, odds are they're more likely to be thinking about it, thinking about a process that happens on its own if you just like completely get out of the way. But it's hard to get out of the way when you have time to focus and think about it.
And by the way, I want to say to people who are live here, if you want to throw in a live question, we really appreciate that. We love that. So let's go back to this email and said that we talked about how, yes, certainly when you're sleep deprived, you fall asleep very quickly. That was maybe not normal. And we also talked about how it's typical to have variability from night to night. That's nothing strange about that. Now, how about the alcohol here? So Alex is asking, okay, actually before that, he's asking, why is it that one night is different from another? And then I think I can start with that one, and spinning off of your thing, Mike, is like, first of all, well, I would say like how you sleep depends on a lot of things. Well, actually, I don't want to confuse people. There's actually two things that are really important, right? How sleepy you are and how kind of hyper aroused you are. But that can depend on what your day was like. So it's again this yin yang thing. If you had a day that started very early and it was a long day and very busy day, then you're probably going to have more consolidated, deeper sleep. If you had a day that was, you got up late and it was very kind of like challenging or engaging mentally, physically, etc., then your night is going to be different probably. And so I think that's why we have variability. It's either that you're not as sleepy or you are more preoccupied. One of those things can push you in either direction. And any comments on that, or? So the question here is like, why is there that we have night to night? Why is one night different from the other?
And I guess my answer is mainly because every day is different.
Exactly.
You get up at a different time, or you're more active during the day. Like, if I have a day where maybe I'm in the yard and I'm doing yard work, I'm just digging and I'm doing all this and I just destroy myself. That night, I'll fall asleep quickly, earlier. I'm pretty sure I sleep deeper, and I don't necessarily sleep longer, which is a really interesting insight that I've had in my own sleep. And so I usually sleep a little longer, but not like longer than you would think. So it's almost like the brain goes deeper as opposed to longer that I experience for being active during the day. But I mean, the broader point, like you asked the question, what makes it variable is just the way that life is. Every day is different. Even with this COVID lockdown stuff, you're eating different things, you're feeling different, moods during the day. Some days you're up a little more, and some days you're a little more down. I mean, it's just natural variation, and so I think that can go into natural variation at night. And as someone who's seen a lot of sleep studies like yourself and clinics, there's a lot of brief awakenings and arousals and all kinds of things at night that just are kind of normal. They just happen. And it doesn't mean the person's going to wake up and say, oh, I woke up 43 times last night. They're going to tell you that they woke up 2 or 3 times, even though they did wake up 43 times. But it doesn't mean they're not going to feel okay.
And now that we're talking about, we've talked about this yin yang, how the night affects the day, the day affects the night, etc. That makes me think about how having trouble sleeping is kind of like a spiral, whereby you start having trouble sleeping, you pay more attention to your sleep, your day becomes more focused on sleep, then you sleep worse, etc. Right? And I think the important thing to know is that getting past and some getting better again is like when it spirals in the other direction, where you start having one good night, they're like, oh, I don't have to focus on this so much, and then your day becomes a little better, your night becomes better, and then it just spirals in the other direction. And I think what's so important to know there is that just like your trouble sleeping may have started with like 2 or 3 nights where you really didn't sleep at all, it doesn't necessarily take that much to go in the other direction. Like when you start
Right.
having like 2, 3 nights that were good, that could be like, you know, when the spiral goes in the other direction, right?
Right. Your confidence goes up, and you know the focus and attention on sleep goes down, and it just leads to long-term success with sleep. Absolutely. So, you know, when people are struggling, like you kind of like along the lines of what you're saying, they, you know, they try to do all these things during the day. You know, they try to exercise more, they try to eat differently, they try all these things, and the problem isn't that they're not necessarily living unhealthily, because they, odds are they probably are reasonably healthy, but it's that they're focusing on sleep. The focus on sleep overrides everything else that people try to do to get sleep. You know, and
that becomes important when you mention like you're out there really digging the yard, like doing all this yard work, and you sleep more, you have more sound sleep. That's because you're not doing that yard work because you want to sleep more, right?
Right, exactly. I just do. I know I sleep deeper, you know, and I've been in this field a long time. I've recorded a lot of studies and clinics and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I know the depth of sleeping. I've recorded myself multiple times over the last 3 decades, by the way. I used to be the guinea pig in the first lab I was in. You know, I'd work nights, and the guy'd come in during the day and say, hey, we want to try out this new thing. You know, would you mind staying here during the day and sleeping here? And I was like single, living in a tiny little apartment. I was like, yeah, this is much nicer than where I live. So I would just stay. I did that a lot when I was young, back in the 1980s. And so I saw a lot of my own sleep. And so I saw like different things, like, you know, I drank a lot more coffee back then than I do now. And, you know, just because I was young and, you know, you're indestructible and all that. And so I could see like different things in my sleep patterns that, you know, I think were largely a result of when I was awake. So
exactly,
a little personal insight
there.
That's
really interesting. How did it, like, when you see your own hypnogram, like how much REM sleep, deep sleep, awakenings, like generally speaking, have you been like surprised, or you been like, oh, just like matter of factly, okay, I expected that, or how has it been like seeing your own sleep pattern like objectively?
It's been, you know, I think I'm rarely surprised. I guess I would say I'm rarely surprised. Maybe just because I've been in the field long. I'm not saying I'm the most knowledgeable sleep person in the world. I'm just saying I've seen my own sleep enough to kind of, you know, it doesn't surprise me when I see like REM period spacing and awakenings during the night and all that kind of stuff. One thing I did have when I first became a sleep tech, I'll just share with you, is after I first started doing sleep studies, I started to get a little bit of insomnia early on. And I'll tell you why. Is because I would go home after working at night and I would lay down, and as I was drifting off, I was picturing my brainwaves. And I was picturing them going from like an alpha rhythm to a theta rhythm. For all you sleep nerds out there, you know what that means. That's like stage 1 sleep. And I was like being aware of it. I was thinking about it, trying to almost like gauge when it was happening. And that actually gave me, like, I remember like a little bit of insomnia. Like I'd be like, gosh, I'm still awake. I shouldn't, you know, just let the sleep happen, you know, don't try to like focus. But I was picturing my own brainwaves, and that actually, in a weird way, kind of gave me a little insomnia. So I don't know.
I just heard, this is something anecdotally I heard about like Bill Dement, that he if somebody told me he was a student of his and I think Stanford or wherever it was, and he was always looking so tired, and they asked me, why are you always looking so tired? He was like, I'm trying to become aware of the moment when I fall asleep. And he was always something like that. Yeah,
that's kind of what I experienced too. And I was so fascinated, you know, by all this. Was new. Everything was like new to me, and I was young, and I wanted to learn and all that. And it just was, I remember sometimes laying down where falling asleep was it took a while, because I kept thinking about my own brainwaves because I had seen them recorded.
Exactly. Really. Now, this leads us, actually, I think this becomes a really good segue to the last question here from Alex, which was, if alcohol makes me relaxed, is it okay to, Zoltan is here, one of our real supporters. How are you, Zoltan? If alcohol makes me relax, is it okay to drink 1 beer? I have a lot of thoughts on this one, but I'll let you go first.
Okay. So I'm not a medical doctor, so whatever I say, any kind of ingesting of any chemicals, I just want to be very clear. This is just my thoughts. I don't think a beer affects really anybody. If it's especially if it's not right before bed, and if especially it's not on an empty stomach, a beer, I don't think there's any effect, and so if that's just kind of in a nutshell, that's my opinion. I don't know. I mean, more alcohol, problematic. Closer to bedtime, more problematic. Without food, more problematic. You metabolize it, kind of starts to fragment, your brain turns into sugar, kind of wakes you up, and it makes sleep apnea worse and snoring. So clearly, if you have like untreated sleep apnea, no one would recommend alcohol. But for someone who's just not really like an untreated sleep apnea person, they're just like kind of a regular person, if you will. I think it'd be hard to argue that a beer is really deleterious to sleep.
I agree with that totally. Like we know that alcohol has some like sleep fragmenting properties. True. If you drink a lot of it on empty stomach before you go to bed, probably not a good idea. But I think for me, what really is like the key of this one to me is like, and by the way, Zoltan, so thanks so much for this live question. We're going to answer it in a second. But going back to the alcohol questions, like to me, it's all about like the intent of it. Like if someone is like, I enjoy to having a glass of wine, or even a glass of, even more than that, like before bed, and I have that with dinner, perfect. Like enjoy that. That's great. But if it's like, I want to have a glass of wine so I can sleep more,
100%.
That's the slippery slope. So, and I've heard like for multiple people lately that have done these things where they're like, I completely stopped drinking alcohol. I completely stopped drinking coffee so I can sleep more. I'm not sleeping better. And when they actually say, screw it, I'm going to have some coffee, that's when they do better. It's not that like the coffee makes them sleep more, but it's like in their mind, they have gone away from that like thinking of like trying to control sleep. So
exactly.
I'm going to have that glass of beer.
And what you're saying, it's so insightful, and it really, it expands to anything.
Yeah.
Like when people, I'll talk to patient, clients, and they'll be like, oh yeah, but I listen to like this like music station at night, when I go to bed and stuff, and they act like it's no big deal, and it's not really a big deal. But I try to impress on them that you want to get to the point. If you want to be like the best sleeper you can be, you rely on nothing to sleep. Zero. It doesn't matter what kind of mattress you're on, pillow you're using, what you ate, all this nothing matters. When you get to that point, your confidence is at its highest level for sleep, because there's nothing to attribute your sleep to at that point. It's just you.
Actually, this becomes kind of the perfect segue to this question here that we have a live question from Zoltan. Love it. So Zoltan says, why does my friend say warm milk at night will help you sleep? It's one of those classic ones, the warm milk. You hear so much about that one. And I'll let you go first on this. What do you think, Mike?
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I would say, first of all, there's no way to prove that it helps everyone sleep. It's like the thing that, it's like the grandmother used to say kind of phrase, right? It's warm milk. You look at it, I take a step back and I go, okay, in general, warmth is more comforting than cold, right? Like people would rather be a little maybe on the warm side than cold. Cold, you're like tense, right? So there's like the temperature component. Milk is a very comforting substance, for people who like it, who don't react negatively to it. I love milk, glass of milk, it's great. It's got a little protein, fat. It's just comforting. It just makes, I associate it with positive things. I think, like a lot of people, it's kind of like childhood kind of feeling,
Right.
The other side of it is like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I know not super healthy, but it's like, you associate it with like relaxed, comfort, peaceful, like, positive things. Well, those are great things to have in mind when you go to bed, instead of like thinking about negative, stressful thing. So I don't think the chemicals in milk, well, if they did put people to sleep, then, we wouldn't be here. Right?
Exactly.
We wouldn't be here. I'd be like, bye, I'll see you some other place. I think, so the question, why does my friend say that? Probably because they've heard that for most of their life, and and they're a good friend and they want to help you. They're trying to help you. So I guess that's how I would directly answer that question.
I love it. And that goes back to like how it's not the chemicals in milk or whatever that makes somebody sleep, but I love that analogy with like that comforting, warm thing. Like when you feel more relaxed, that whatever that is that makes you feel that way can help with sleep. But again, always important to not do anything for the purpose of sleeping, because then it will backfire. That was number one. And the other thing I thought about here was like the general thing about like, why does my friend, or why do people get all these advice? Like, why do everybody seems to have a piece of advice for someone with trouble sleeping? And I think the analogy I like here is the one where it's the same thing with the common cold. You know, everybody has heard about you should, you know, have some garlic, you know, or chamomile tea is good. No, vitamin C is the thing. No, you got to do this. And
chicken soup, right?
Chicken soup, you know. And the thing is that proves something. When there are like 1,259 remedies for something, that proves that none of them work. Because if one worked, there would just be that thing, right? So
it's exactly
it goes
right.
Back to this one again.
Exactly right.
Perfect.
But I would say, you know, your friend is trying to help you, so you have a great friend.
That's right.
You know, like that's good. Everyone should have great friends like that want to help you.
And then I have sneak in this one too, where like it's friends are almost always great to have, because they're not trying to manipulate you, or like they just want the best for you.
Yeah, they're looking out for you.
They're looking out for you, which is perfect in life in general. But it can be tricky when it comes to sleep, because those things your friend tells you to do are rarely actually helpful. And it takes me into this, like I have this kind of little spiel about why you shouldn't maybe talk too much with your friends when you have trouble sleeping. It's because sometimes it's like your friends just give you this look like, what are you talking about? Like something is wrong with you, you know, like that. And also they can send you off in directions which are not helpful. But yes, staying positive here, Zoltan, you have a good friend there, somebody that helps you. That's always good.
Yeah. Probably wasn't the answer he was thinking he was going to get, I guess. But
perfect.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a good question. Thank you for asking.
And so I think we'll see. We're in this phase where like we're experimenting, right? We're doing this first time live together, and we're changing the name of the channel. But we'll see what happens. But my latest thinking is maybe our weekly session will be this thing where we pick one question and we go deep into that one, you know, as opposed to the ones I do where I kind of answer multiple ones. But
yeah, it's great. It's fun. I love the live aspect. It's great. I really do.
And then when we've decided upon a time, we'll announce that so people know that you and I are live together this time, so people can ask live questions.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Cool. We'll just say thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks.
Thanks everybody.
Here.
Yeah.
We'll be back very soon.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.